Hello guys, welcome to Redditor's Revenge. Here we post amazing revenge stories daily. And if you want more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel and stay tuned with us. Moving on to our today's story. I am a lawyer. I always have been proud of my profession. Since I graduated from law school about 5 years ago, I've done my best to practice my career up to the standards of a righteous lawyer, and I have always felt like I succeeded in doing so. I know the vast majority of my cases have been oriented to defending people in positions of power. I know my target isn't exactly that of a protector of the common folk, but that is just because of the environment in which I got to grow up, the people I got to study with, and finally, because of the clients my buffet ends up assigning me to. It is something that from time to time makes me feel conflicted, and at the end of the day, it is not an easy topic for me to face. But I'm not willing to change my lifestyle or the way I handle my profession just for that reason alone. It just isn't my purpose in this professional world, and I got to make peace with that until not so long ago. The last person you want to hear tackling topics that make you feel uneasy about yourself and your career in an offensive manner is a close friend. And that is something I had to deal with when I was friends with the one that starred this story that I'm about to share. We knew each other since childhood. He is the son of a close friend of my father, so he used to come by since I was in elementary school. We used to play video games while our parents discussed stocks and cases they were handling. Both of our parents were lawyers at the time, and both of them were pretty successful, to say the least. But when we got to high school, some major events shook his family deeply. His dad was involved in a financial scandal. One of his clients was found guilty of diverting funds from clients of a major company, and my friend's dad was found guilty of helping him and even acting as the owner of several overseas accounts with misappropriated funds of the shareholders. His dad ended up going to jail, and his life standards changed suddenly. His family was vetoed from most of the clubs we frequented. When we graduated, he couldn't afford to go to a private college as I did. And all of those events brewed up some jealousy and resentment towards the world of law practice from his part. My dad did his best to keep him around since he understood how hard it must have been for my friend to experience all the things he went through. He kept hanging around at our place and was a usual guest at our holiday parties. We never made him feel less because of what happened to his family, but some people can't avoid having inferiority complexes and showcasing them from time to time through toxic behavior. I did my best to ignore it. Each time I was around him with friends we had in common, eventually, he made stingy remarks about my profession, jokes about how lawyers were a bunch of vultures preying on anyone's misfortune and such. I tried to let them slide through with a smile and a witty remark, but deep down I knew that he would cross the line someday and I would have to deal with it. Time went by and eventually, my friend found himself in a long-term relationship with a girl he met while studying sociology at a community college. Once he got into that career, his way of thinking became more and more radical. Left-wing-oriented conversation topics began to arise in each one of our casual meetings among friends, and his girlfriend was no exception. They both were radicalized in a way only an average suburban middle-class first-world person could be, which means preaching plenty of stuff that they didn't practice in their day-to-day life. But their love held strong, and eventually they decided to get married, and I and my family got invited. I thought the wedding was going to be a fun time for me to spend with our friends and family. I was happy for him to find a partner he was willing to spend his whole life with. The ceremony went by with no major incidents. It took place at an old church in our town. Everyone was having a great time. Then we arrived at the wedding party at the hall of a hotel my father owned. He had no problem in setting up everything for my friend to celebrate his marriage with all the years we've had him around our lives. His best man gave a speech, everyone clapped, and then we had dinner. We shared a table with the groom and the bride since we were close to him. Drinks started to come and go, and everyone was getting a little tipsy by that point. Conversations were getting a bit heated, and when the issue of politics came up, it all went downwards. My friend started giving these witty, ill-intended opinions on social class and politicians. I was on my 5th glass of whiskey, so I was letting myself go with my acute remarks as well. One thing led to another, and we both were growing more and more irritated with our different views on the world and on economic systems, and from one minute to another we were directing our arrows to one another personally. I was not up to pretending I didn't care and sliding it under the rug as I had done times before. This time I knew he would cross the line, and he did. He told me I had no right to give my opinion since I was just another leech of the system. He called me a lawyer with no morals that stood up behind the power to keep them out of trouble, while they preyed on the less favored people in our society. Then I went out of my way to prove he wasn't up to live by the words he preached, talking about socialism and communism while living a comfortable life and pretending to be better just by shaming everyone else that had a better life. He closed up by numbering a list of reasons why my buffet has defended some of the wealthiest and most controversial figures in our country, and things went out of hand when he tried to humiliate me by asking how come I haven't been promoted, with all the years I had worked for them. He said all of my friends are already in higher-up positions while I still remain in the same one. He said I was just another loser advocating for the powerful in hopes that they pity me and take me to their level, which it will never happen. I stood up, said that it was a shame he never got to solve his issues with his own social status, and regretted being a target for his jealousy, a thing which I wasn't willing to take up anymore. I left the party and never spoke to him since that day. I asked my father to avoid inviting him to occasions in which I was invited to, and encouraged him to distance himself from him. I believed it was the right thing to do since all that ill will and unsolved resentment would manifest and harm us one day. He told me he couldn't turn his back on him since he is the son of his old best friend. He explained to me that what happened to his father could have happened to him. Back in the day, when my friend's father was presented with the opportunity of getting involved in those illegal schemes with that company, my father was asked to take part in it. He said to me that he was deeply tempted to get involved in all of that, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. He thought he did it out of righteousness, but deep down he still has doubts about if his choice to turn down that offer was made out of fear instead. He told me that, in his weakest hour, perhaps, he could have gotten involved in it and shared the same fate that my friend's father did. That kept me thinking for a while, but then I told him that sadly, my now ex-friend held a resentment towards us that wouldn't be healed in a short time and that it wasn't fair to us to deal with that. 2 years after that conversation, my father passed away, and our friend didn't even bother to show up at his funeral. Now, 5 years have passed since I distanced myself from that guy. A few months ago I received a call at my desk in the buffet. I recognized his voice. It was him and he was deeply shaken. He told me something terrible had happened and that he needed to meet with me as a lawyer to take a case for him. I told him my schedule was very busy this week, which wasn't a lie, but it suited me perfectly for rejecting to work with him, which was exactly what I wanted. He told me he understood that and asked me then to hear his problem and assess the situation to decide if I was willing to take the case. I reluctantly agreed since he sounded so desperate, and turning him down would have been an uncomfortable situation. It turns out that his wife was involved in a car accident 3 days ago, while they were celebrating at a casino his new deal as a speech manager for an upcoming politician. He and his wife ended up leaving the place heavily intoxicated. His wife was the soberest of the two at the time, but still, she couldn't manage to brake in time at an intersection and ended up crashing against another car. It seemed like inside the car there was a young man with his girlfriend, and the impact ended up killing the guy and heavily injuring the woman. He told me the past few days have been very difficult, that his wife has been in jail waiting for trial, and since then they haven't managed to find a lawyer that is willing to take the case since the media is most likely to get involved as a political figure is related to him. He managed to get out on bail since he wasn't driving, but still, it was his car. He told me the party funds were open to paying any amount of money to a lawyer that was willing to get involved and get him out of the issue. He told me he had already spoken with my buffet owner and he had told him that they would wait on my assessment to determine if we were going to take the case or not. I told him I would have to make a few calls and visit the police precinct to check the charges and details on the upcoming trial. I hung up and sent my intern to check everything out and bring me a folder with everything he could gather. When my intern came back, I knew the case was a lost cause. I checked everything and there was no chance in hell that anyone could defend him or that woman and have them end up in liberty. She would surely face manslaughter charges, and since he allowed her to use his vehicle, he would probably have to spend some time in jail too. It wasn't anywhere near close to a good decision for our firm to take the case and also get involved with all the media that it would attract. I went to my boss's office and explained all my views on this case, and he just told me so you see it too. It had never crossed my boss's mind to take the case on his call, but he gave me a chance to make the final decision, since the prospect told him he was an old childhood friend of mine. I said I wasn't willing to do it. I went back to my office and picked up my phone. I dialed my ex-friend. I told him that sadly we wouldn't be taking the case. I told him I hoped that justice acted right and sent my regards to his wife. Lastly, I asked him to stop referring to me as an old childhood friend. Now, here is the end of our first story, and I hope you guys are enjoying my content. So before moving to the final story, you can share your thought about OP's friend and their friendship. Or do you think that's karma? Please tell me in the comments section. Also, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned with us for more revenge stories.
Now, moving to our final story. This is about the spouse that I married on that fateful visit by DS. Now, when I met C-Face here to known as CF, he was ideal. He was what I thought I needed. I believed I loved him and that the fairytale was real. We met by random chance, both many hours from our homes, me whilst running away from a situation at home, he while a planned trip abroad. I ended up in Europe within a month and we married about 10 months later. All good, right? Well, it was. Until I started racking up multiple university degrees with honors and he began to realize that not only was I significantly younger than about 17 years, thinner, and according to him better looking, I was now significantly better educated. He was always a bit insecure, but the degrees seemed to push him over the edge. While I was waiting for my spousal visa, things were falling apart. We both kind of gave up but decided to resolve to save our relationship. I moved and found that nothing he had promised to prepare had happened. The home situation was a mess. We were living with his quite elderly widower father and he was meant to be taking care of him and the household. None of this was happening. Instead, both CF and his disgusting sister, now known as Ugly Fuck or UF, were essentially living as leeches off of their 80-something father. I tried to make things work. But within a week and a half of my landing, he threw an iPad at my head and punched the wall next to my head while screaming that he could have me deported at will. Okay, well, fine, I made a promise. I kept trying, it got worse. I took months of emotional abuse, insults, threats, cursing, and everything else short of him laying hands on me. 6 months later, he randomly disappeared for 2 weeks to visit Seattle without mentioning it to me. I left. I started over with nothing much to my name, but a job and a bit of money thousands of kilometers from anyone I knew. He expected me to run home. I didn't falter, I blossomed. About a year later, I met my present partner who has been the truest and most loyal partner I could have wished for. Truly, if I had to do it all again, I would if I knew my partner would be on the other side. Now for my revenge. I happened to find out that he had a new girlfriend that seemed very serious, and noticed she had mentioned wedding planning on social media. You have to keep tabs on your abusers, especially when your safety is at risk. Now, she's welcome to him. The only issue is, due to draconian divorce laws in my current country, we were not divorced yet. He planned on marrying her in another country. When we met, he told me he had never been married. I later found out he was indeed divorced. I was willing to bet he fed her the same lie. So, I sent her a message, and my suspicions were confirmed. He told her he had never been married. I was his second wife. She didn't want to believe it until I sent her a photo of our marriage license as well as a few wedding photos. I did feel really bad about doing that to her because I could tell how hurt she was, but I knew it was better for her to know the truth than to inadvertently marry him the next month in Seattle as they had planned. She had children and had a violent ex-husband. She and I ended the conversation on a positive note with her thanking me and me apologizing, and explaining why I felt I had to tell her. And then the fallout. My phone started blowing the duck up with unknown numbers in the evening. I wonder who that might be. I was out enjoying a lovely dinner with my partner and answered a call on speaker. In came the usual threats to my person and security, blah blah blah. I could only laugh. He didn't know where I was, nor was he getting past my partner. I could finally relax knowing I was safe, after months of night terrors. And then, I have lost the love of my life because of you. She has left me and thrown all of my things out of her home. People, I lost it, I could not stop laughing. It was poetic. He sent a similar email to my mother laced with blatant lies about me, as if she didn't know the play-by-play as it was happening, and as if she'd believe a word he had to say anyway. After I got done laughing, I hung up on him and had my number changed. Then, I remembered his sister was living at the same home. UF has a disabled daughter that lives 200 kilometers away whom she claims benefits, including an apartment and money allowances. She then sublets the handicap-accessible apartment to her boyfriend illegally whilst leeching off of her father. She's also a thief, caught on a hidden camera taking notes out of CF's wallet. CF and UF despise each other and are only both living there in hopes of driving the other out to get the house as an inheritance. Now, if UF got reported to the council for fraud and they did a minimal investigation, they'd see she was falsely claiming benefits for an adult daughter who lived far away and had her benefits from another council. She would lose her apartment and possibly face jail time. If she lost her apartment, it was certain she would never leave her father's home. It was CF's worst nightmare. So, I made it happen. Besides, how dare UF claim money she isn't entitled to simply due to her being too lazy to work? She was a neglectful mother when she was caring for her kid, leaving her kid in a wheelchair with a jam sandwich and running to the pub the moment benefit money came in. And now she was lying and keeping a rarely accessible apartment from someone who truly needs it. That more than justified it, but the thought of both of them being stuck in the same house, fighting all day and night, both too lazy to leave and too stubborn to give up the inheritance they fantasize about. That's a lovely thought to me. What makes it better? Knowing he cried his eyes out over his lost fiancée in that very same house, soaking in his miserable existence. Now, that concludes our video for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Guys, let me know what's your opinion about this story, and you can also share your stories about your asshole spouse and in-laws in the comments section. So before leaving, please hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel to stay tuned with us for more awesome stories.